I sold my dead wife's wedding ring to fund my son's dream wedding, then watched him toast to the room about how his father abandoned him. My name is Samuel Whitaker. Most folks call me Sam. I'm 69 years old, a retired farmer living on 40 acres just outside Kansas City, Missouri. The land's been in my family since 1947. I worked it for 43 years. Corn, soybeans, some cattle when prices were right. My hands are scarred from fence wire and engine grease. My back aches when the weather turns. I know the smell of rain coming across open fields, and I know what it feels like when your own son erases you from his life. Eleanor, my wife, died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to the funeral. The house still smells like her lavender soap sometimes, though I know that's impossible. I haven't moved her reading glasses from the kitchen windowsill. I'm not ready. Before you think I'm telling you a story about grief, I'm not. I'm telling you about betrayal. My son Dylan left this farm 10 years ago. He was 24. We had an argument, the kind fathers and sons have when one wants the city, and the other can't understand why good land and honest work aren't enough. He said I didn't respect his dreams. I said dreams don't pay mortgages. We both said things we shouldn't have. Then he was gone. Not just gone from the farm, gone from my life. No phone calls, no letters, no text messages, even though I learned how to use the damn things just to stay in touch with him. Birthdays came and went. Thanksgiving, Christmas. Eleanor would set an extra place at the table those first few years, just in case. It stayed empty. When she got sick, I called him, left voicemails, sent emails through his old college address. Nothing. She asked about him right up until the morphine made her too confused to remember she had a son. I lied and said he'd visit soon. I'm not proud of that, but what else was I supposed to do? After the funeral, the silence got heavier. The farmhouse is big when you're the only one in it. I kept busy, sold off most of the livestock, leased the fields to a younger farmer down the road. I fixed things that didn't need fixing. I watched a lot of television. I learned that you can be lonely in a house full of memories, or lonely in a house you've emptied out, and it doesn't make much difference either way. If you're watching this from somewhere else in the country or the world, drop your location in the comments. And if this story feels familiar, if you've got a child who walked away, hit that like button. You're not alone in this. 10 years is a long time to wonder what you did wrong. Long enough to rehearse apologies you'll never get to say. Long enough to imagine reconciliations that never come. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning in March, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I recognized the voice. It was Dylan. When my son's voice cracked and he called me Dad for the first time in 10 years, I would have given him anything, and that's exactly what he counted on. Dad, that one word hit me like a physical thing. My chest tightened. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I sat down hard in the kitchen chair, the same chair I'd sat in 10,000 mornings, but this morning was different. Dylan. My voice sounded strange to me, too rough, too emotional. Dad, I know I don't deserve this call. His voice was warm, apologetic, thick with what sounded like tears. Everything I'd dreamed of hearing for a decade. I've been terrible. I was angry and stupid, and I handled everything wrong. I'm so sorry. About Mom, about disappearing, about all of it. I couldn't speak. I literally could not form words. I've changed, he continued. I met someone. Her name's Brooke Patterson. She's amazing, Dad. We're getting married in June, and I want you there. I need you there. I want to make things right. I was crying. I'm not ashamed to tell you that. A 69-year-old man sitting in his kitchen, crying like a child because his son called him Dad. I'd like that. I managed. I'd like that very much. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me about Brooke, a corporate lawyer from Chicago. Smart, beautiful, who came from money. He told me about his job in marketing, his apartment in Lincoln Park, how he'd been in therapy, and realized how much damage he'd done by cutting me out. He sounded sincere. He sounded like the boy I raised, the one who used to help me fix the tractor and fell asleep reading books about space exploration. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. Then his tone shifted, just slightly. Dad, there's something I need to ask you, and I hate doing this, but I don't have anyone else to turn to. He paused. Our wedding venue fell through. The place we booked went bankrupt. Took our deposit. We found a new location. It's perfect. Exactly what Brooks always dreamed of. But we need to put down $50,000 to secure it. The wedding's in 3 months, and everything else is already arranged, and he trailed off. $50,000. I know it's a lot, Dylan said quickly. I'll pay you back. I swear I will. But this wedding, it's not just about me and Brooke. It's about showing you that I've built something good, that I became someone you can be proud of. This is our chance to be a family again, Dad. I looked around my kitchen. Eleanor's coffee mug still sat by the sink. Her apron hung on its hook. The morning light came through the window, the same way it had for 46 years. Family. I'll get you the money, I said. Dad, are you sure? I don't wanna. I'm sure. Thank you. His voice broke. Thank you so much. This means everything. You'll see, Dad. This changes everything. We talked for a few more minutes. He promised to send details about the wedding. He said he'd call again soon. He said he loved me. I sat in that kitchen for an hour after we hung up, staring at Eleanor's jewelry box on the shelf above the refrigerator. I was about to do something I never thought I'd do, but it was for family, for my son, for a second chance at being a father. The jeweler held Eleanor's sapphire necklace up to the light and said, "Beautiful piece. Your wife had excellent taste." Had. Past tense. Just like my hopes for my son. It took 3 days to turn 46 years of marriage into cash. I drove into downtown Kansas City on Wednesday morning, found a jeweler on the plaza, the kind of place with tasteful lighting and soft carpet. The man behind the counter was maybe 50, professional, gentle-voiced. He probably dealt with widowers selling their wives' jewelry all the time. I set Eleanor's engagement ring on the velvet pad between us. Half-carat diamond, white gold band. I bought it in 1976 with money I'd saved from 2 summers of construction work. I proposed to her on the porch of her parents' farmhouse, and when she said yes, her hands were shaking so badly I could barely slide the ring on. "Excellent condition," the jeweler said, examining it through his loupe. "Classic setting." Next came our wedding band. Simple, engraved with our wedding date, June 12th, 1977. She wore it every single day for 39 years, until the hospice nurse removed it because her fingers had gotten too thin. Then, the sapphire necklace. I gave her that one on our 25th anniversary, saved for 8 months to afford it. She wore it to church on Sundays and to the rare dinner out. When she put it on, she'd stand in front of the bedroom mirror and touch it like it was the most precious thing in the world. It was. The jeweler held it up to the light, and that's when he said it. "Your wife had excellent taste." Had. She did, I said. He worked his calculator, factored in gold weight and gem quality and current market rates. None of it meant anything to me. You can't calculate what these things actually cost. "I can offer $31,000, he said. I'd hoped for more. I'd need more. "That's fine," I said. He wrote me a check. I shook his hand. I walked out of that store feeling like I'd betrayed Eleanor in her grave, but I told myself she'd understand. She always wanted Dylan to come home. She would have sold her jewelry herself if it meant getting our son back. I went to the bank next. My savings account had been built slowly over years. Money for property taxes, for equipment repairs, for the inevitable medical expenses that come with being 69 years old. $19,000. It would leave me with almost nothing, but Dylan said he'd pay me back. The bank manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled my accounts for 15 years, didn't ask questions when I requested the wire transfer. She just processed the paperwork. "Routing number?" she asked. I read it off the text Dylan had sent. 50,000 even, she confirmed. To Dylan Whitaker. "That's right." She clicked her mouse. The money disappeared from my account. Just like that. $50,000. Eleanor's rings, her necklace, her memory converted to numbers on a screen. "All set," Patricia said. "He should have it within the hour." I called Dylan from the parking lot. "Dad?" He sounded distracted. Traffic noise in the background. "The money's sent," I said. "Oh, great." Yeah, I got the notification. Thanks, Dad. Really. Yeah, thank you. The wedding details. When will you send those? Soon. I've got to run. I'm late for a meeting. But I'll call you. We'll figure everything out. Dylan, I really gotta go, Dad. But thank you. Seriously. He hung up. I sat in my truck in that parking lot, staring at my phone. Something felt wrong, but I pushed the feeling down. This was about trust, about believing in second chances, about being the father my son needed. I started the truck and drove home. I wouldn't hear from Dylan again for 6 weeks. I spent 2 weeks practicing a father of the groom speech for a wedding I'd never be invited to. I just didn't know it yet. The money cleared on a Thursday. I know because I checked my bank account online, something I'd only recently learned how to do, and watched the balance drop to nearly nothing. $50,000 gone in an instant. But that was fine. That was the investment. The wedding details would come soon. Friday, I called Dylan. Straight to voicemail. Saturday, I texted. Got the money sorted. When's the wedding? What's the dress code? The message showed as delivered. Then it turned blue, which meant he'd read it. No response. Sunday, I called again. Voicemail. By Wednesday, I'd called 4 more times. Each call went unanswered. I told myself he was busy. Wedding planning. Work. Life in the city moves fast. He'd call when he had a moment, but the silence gnawed at me. I needed something to do with my hands, with my mind. I drove into Independence, to a men's clothing store in a strip mall I'd passed 1,000 times, but never entered. The kind of place with mannequins in the windows wearing things no one around here actually wears. The salesman was young, enthusiastic. What's the occasion? My son's wedding, I said. It felt good to say out loud. He set me up with a charcoal gray suit, pressed white shirt, burgundy tie. I stood in front of the 3-panel mirror and barely recognized myself. The last suit I'd owned was for Eleanor's funeral, and I donated it to Goodwill because I couldn't stand looking at it. You look sharp, the salesman said. $340. More than I'd spent on clothes in the past 5 years combined, but a father should look proper at his son's wedding. I put it on my credit card. Back at the farm, I hung the suit in my closet and started working on my speech. I'd never been good with words. That was Eleanor's gift. But I wanted to say something meaningful, something that would let Dylan know I was proud of him, that I forgave him, that we could start over. I practiced in the barn, standing next to the workbench, speaking to empty air. When Dylan was 8 years old, he helped me rebuild a fence after a storm. No, that was too sentimental. My son and I lost our way for a while. Too accusatory. I'm grateful to be here today. Too simple. I must have written 15 versions. Crossed out words, started over. I imagined Dylan's face when I spoke, imagined him tearing up, imagined Brooke smiling at him, proud that her husband had such a decent father. On day 12, I told my cousin Jerry about the reconciliation. We were sitting on his porch, drinking iced tea. Jerry's 71, retired from the post office, has been my closest friend since childhood. Dylan called, I said. He's getting married. Asked me to come. Jerry studied me. That right? I needed some financial help with the venue. I sent him $50,000. Jerry's silence was heavy. He sipped his tea. I looked out at his yard, finally said, "Have you heard from him since?" "He's busy with wedding planning." Jerry nodded slowly. Didn't say what I could see in his eyes. On day 14, my phone rang. Unknown number. Chicago area code. I grabbed it before the second ring, my heart racing. "Dylan?" "No." A woman's voice. Professional. Cool. "This is Brooke Patterson, Dylan's fiancée. We need to talk." I sat down at the kitchen table. Something in her tone made my legs weak. "Of course," I said. "Is everything all right?" "That depends on your definition." She called me Samuel, not Sam, not Dad, and told me my dirt under the fingernails life wasn't elegant enough for their champagne wedding. "Samuel, Dylan and I have discussed this extensively, and we've decided you won't be attending the wedding." The words didn't make sense at first, like she'd spoken a foreign language. "I'm sorry, what?" "The wedding." Her voice was patient, the way you'd explain something to a child. "You won't be attending. We appreciate your financial contribution, but your presence isn't going to work for us. I don't understand. Did I say something wrong? Do something wrong? It's not personal, Samuel. Dylan's at a critical juncture in his career. He's launching a tech consulting firm. His clients will be at this wedding. Investors, people who matter in his industry. He's building a professional brand, and we need everything to align with that brand. I'm his father. Yes, and your background doesn't align with the image we're cultivating. My background, 43 years of farming, of waking up before dawn, of calloused hands and an honest day's work. That background. I'd like to speak to Dylan, I said quietly. That's not possible. Dylan's too emotional to have this conversation. That's why he asked me to handle it. He knows this is the right decision, but he's too sentimental to deliver the message himself. He can't even tell me himself. He's protecting you from an uncomfortable situation, Samuel. The venue is a 5-star estate in Mission Hills. The guest list is very carefully curated. Important people, sophisticated people. Frankly, you're a retired farmer from Missouri. You'd be out of your element. We can't have guests wondering who the backwards man in the cheap suit is, asking awkward questions about Dylan's background. The cheap suit. The charcoal gray suit hanging in my closet. $340 I didn't have. The suit I'd bought to watch my son get married. I raised him, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. I raised him on that farm you're calling backwards. That's where he learned to walk. Where his mother isn't here, Brooke interrupted. And honestly, that might be for the best. This is a new chapter for Dylan, a fresh start. He's worked very hard to distance himself from his rural roots. We need his wedding to reflect who he is now, not where he came from. I sold my wife's wedding ring to give him that money. Silence on the line. Brief. Then, and we're grateful for the generous contribution. Truly, the venue is spectacular. You helped make Dylan's dream wedding possible. You should feel good about that. Generous contribution. Eleanor's engagement ring, her wedding band, the sapphire necklace, our life savings, a generous contribution. Let me talk to Dylan, I said again. I've explained the situation. There's nothing more to discuss. The decision is final. I'm sure you understand. You seem like a reasonable man. Sometimes love means stepping back, letting your child become who they're meant to be, without dragging them down with reminders of where they started. She paused. I heard paper rustling in the background. I need to go, she said. We have a tasting appointment, but thank you again for your support, Samuel. Dylan asked me to tell you he hopes you'll respect his wishes. Brooke, goodbye. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the screen. The call had lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. 4 minutes and 37 seconds to be erased from my son's life. Not erased. That wasn't accurate. Paid off. Discarded. Deemed unworthy. I looked at the empty jewelry box still sitting on the counter where I'd left it 2 weeks ago. Eleanor's rings would have been safer in the ground with her. I sat on the floor where my wife died and realized I'd failed her last request. Except Eleanor never said, "Let him humiliate you." She said, "Take care of our boy." And maybe that meant something different. The phone slipped from my hand, clattered on the kitchen table, then fell to the floor. I didn't pick it up. I just sat there, right there in the kitchen, on the linoleum floor that Eleanor had picked out in 1989, cream-colored with tiny blue flowers. She'd made me drive to 3 different stores before she found the pattern she wanted. This was where she'd cooked Sunday dinners for 30 years. Pot roast and mashed potatoes, green beans from the garden, apple pie cooled on the windowsill. Dylan used to sit in the corner doing homework while she worked, and she'd quiz him on spelling words while she stirred gravy. I stared at the empty jewelry box on the table above me. The house was absolutely quiet. No wind outside, no cars on the distant road, just silence pressing in from every direction. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. There's a kind of pain that goes too deep for tears. It just sits in your chest, like a stone, cold and heavy, pulling everything down into it. Eleanor's last words to me came back. She'd been in the hospice bed, the morphine making her drift in and out. She'd grabbed my hand, her grip so weak I barely felt it, and whispered, take care of our boy. I'd promised her I would. I'd failed that promise once already, 10 years ago, when Dylan walked away and I let him go, when I was too proud or too hurt or too stubborn to chase after him, to fix whatever had broken between us. And now, I've failed her again. I'd sold her rings, the symbols of our life together, and bought myself a second chance at being a father, except I hadn't bought anything. I just funded my son's dream wedding and purchased my own humiliation. Backwards man in a cheap suit. That's what she'd called me, what they thought of me, what Dylan thought of me, even if he was too cowardly to say it himself. The light outside was fading. I don't know how long I'd been sitting there. An hour, maybe more. The kitchen was growing dark, shadows stretching across the floor, and I didn't have the energy to stand up and turn on a light. I thought about calling Dylan, begging him to reconsider, promising I'd stay quiet in the back, wouldn't talk to anyone, wouldn't embarrass him. I could wear the suit and keep my mouth shut and just be there, just watch my son get married. That's how far I'd fallen, ready to beg for permission to exist in the same room as my own child. I heard a truck in the driveway, Jerry's diesel engine. I'd know that rattle anywhere. A minute later, the back door opened. Jerry stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the last light of the day. He looked at me on the floor, looked at the phone, looked at my face. He didn't ask what happened. He just came in, walked across the kitchen, and sat down on the floor beside me. His knees cracked. He grunted, but he sat. We stayed like that for a while. Two old men sitting on a kitchen floor in the dark. Finally, Jerry said, "They're not inviting you." It wasn't a question. "No," I said, "but they kept the money." "Yes." Jerry was quiet. Then, that woman, Brooke, she's the one who called? She said I'm too backwards for their 5-star wedding. Said I'd embarrass Dylan in front of his clients. And Dylan? Too emotional to tell me himself? According to her, Jerry made a sound in his throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. Too emotional. That's one word for it. He shifted his weight, leaned back against the cabinet. Eleanor would have had something to say about this. She told me to take care of him. Taking care of someone doesn't mean letting them rob you and spit in your face, Sam. He's my son. Right now, he's a thief. The word hung in the air between us. Thief. Harsh. True. Jerry turned to look at me. What are we going to do about this? Not what are you going to do? What are we? I looked at him. I don't know. Well, Jerry said, I think we'd better figure it out. My cousin Jerry said, you paid for this wedding. You've got every right to see how your money's being spent. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to beg anymore. We were sitting at his kitchen table the next morning. I'd barely slept. Jerry had made coffee strong enough to strip paint, and he'd brought over a yellow legal pad and a pen. Tell me everything she said, Jerry instructed. Word for word, I recounted the conversation. Brooke's clinical tone, the professional brand language, backwards man in a cheap suit, Dylan being too emotional to deliver his own rejection. Jerry's jaw tightened. He'd been writing notes, but his pen stopped moving. 5-star estate in Lake Forest, he repeated. That's what she said. He picked up his phone, scrolled through his contacts. Jerry had been an electrician for 47 years before retiring. He knew every contractor, every service company, every vendor in the Kansas City metro. He started making calls. First call, Tommy, it's Jerry Whitaker. Yeah, been a while. Listen, you're still doing event lighting? I need information on a wedding. Big one, mid-June, probably Lake Forest or Mission Hills area. 3 calls later, he had it. Thornhill Estate, Jerry said, writing it down. Mission Hills, Saturday, June 15th, 200 guests, catered by Premier Events KC. He made another call. Marcus, Jerry Whitaker, how's business? Good, good. Listen, you handling a wedding at Thornhill on the 15th? Dylan Whitaker, marrying Brooke Patterson? I watched Jerry's face as he listened. Yeah, that's the one. I need a favor, and it's going to sound strange, but hear me out. Jerry explained the situation. Not all of it, just enough. Dylan's estrangement, the $50,000 request, the humiliating rejection. Marcus, apparently, was a father of 3 daughters. He understood immediately. They always need extra wait staff for events that size, Jerry said after he hung up. Marcus just added Sam Whitaker to the temporary roster. You'll have a uniform. You'll work the main ballroom. And you'll be standing right there when Dylan and his bride celebrate with your money. Jerry, I can't. Can't what? Can't witness what you paid for? Can't see your own son get married? I'll be serving drinks. Exactly. You know what rich people don't see, Sam? Waiters, service staff. We're furniture to them. Invisible. You put on that uniform, lower your eyes, say yes, sir, and more champagne, ma'am, and you disappear. They won't even know you're there. He pulled out another sheet of paper, started sketching from memory. I wired Thornhill Estate back in 1998, Jerry said. Whole electrical system. I know that place inside and out. He drew the main ballroom, marked the service entrance, the kitchen, the positions where staff would stand during dinner service. Speeches happen around 7 p.m. after dinner. You'll be positioned here, refilling champagne. Perfect view of the head table. What am I supposed to do, Jerry? Just watch. That's up to you, he said. But you've got 12 days to figure it out. I looked at the sketch, at the layout, at the careful notes about timing and positioning. Why are you doing this? I asked. Jerry looked up at me. His eyes were hard. Because you're my cousin. Because Eleanor was like a sister to me. And because that boy needs to understand what he's done. He slid the legal pad across the table. 12 days, he repeated. Let's get to work. I spent a week learning to be invisible in a room full of people celebrating with my money. Turns out, when you're serving the champagne, nobody remembers you bought it. Jerry brought the uniform on Tuesday. Black slacks, white button-down shirt, black vest, black bow tie, standard waiter attire. I put it on in my bedroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked exactly like what Brooke had called me. The help. Something about seeing myself that way, dressed to serve at my own son's wedding, should have broken me, but it didn't. It clarified things. How do I carry one of these? I asked Jerry, holding up a serving tray he'd borrowed from Marcus. We spent 3 hours practicing how to balance champagne flutes so they don't tip, how to hold the tray at shoulder height, how to move through crowds without bumping into guests, how to pour wine without splashing. Posture, Jerry coached, shoulders slightly rounded, eyes down, deferential. You're there to serve, not to be seen. When someone talks to you, it's, yes, sir, right away, ma'am, my pleasure. You become a ghost. I practiced the movements until my shoulder ached. What if Dylan recognizes me? I asked. From a distance, in that uniform, with the right adjustments? He won't. Jerry had thought of that too. The next day, I stopped shaving. By the end of the week, I had a short, gray beard. Nothing dramatic, just enough to alter my face's shape. Jerry brought over a pair of reading glasses with plain lenses. Put these on, he said. I did. I looked in the mirror again. I barely recognized myself. We rehearsed scenarios. What if a guest asks my name? Sam Wilson, sir. What if someone asks how long I've worked for the catering company? Just part-time, ma'am. Retired veteran, need to stay busy. What's my background? Served in the army. Been doing events for a few months now. The lies came easier than I expected. Maybe because they were built on a foundation of truth. I was a veteran. I did need to stay busy. I just wasn't mentioning the 43 years of farming or the dead wife whose jewelry paid for the open bar. On Friday morning, 1 week before the wedding, I did something I'd been putting off. I went into my phone's voicemail archive and found the message Dylan had left 3 weeks earlier. The one where his voice cracked, where he begged, where he promised reconciliation and swore to pay me back and called me the best father I could have asked for. I saved it to my recordings, backed it up to 3 different places. Evidence. Jerry noticed what I was doing. Are you planning to use that? I don't know yet. If you do, he said carefully, it'll burn every bridge. The bridge is already burned. He burned it. He poured gasoline on it and lit the match and watched it collapse. I looked at Jerry. I just want him to see the fire. That night, I laid the uniform out on my bed, pressed the shirt and slacks, polished the black shoes Jerry had provided. I practiced tying the bow tie until I could do it without thinking. I stood in front of the mirror one more time. The man looking back at me wasn't Samuel Whitaker, retired farmer, widower, abandoned father. He was nobody, a service worker, invisible, beneath notice. Perfect. If you've ever been made to feel invisible by your own family, if you've been dismissed or looked down on for honest work, leave a comment. You're not alone. And hit that subscribe button. This story's just getting started. Jerry came by that evening to check on me. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. I looked at the uniform, thought about Dylan's voice on that recording, thought about Brooke's clinical dismissal, thought about Eleanor's ring sitting in some stranger's jewelry case. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready. Remember, once you walk in there, you can't take it back." "I know." Jerry nodded. "Good. I'll pick you up at dawn on Saturday." He left. I didn't sleep much that night either. The night before I crashed my son's wedding, I asked my dead wife's photograph for permission, and when I looked at her smile, I swear I heard her say, "Make him remember who raised him." Friday, June 14th. The uniform hung on my bedroom door like a ghost. I'd tried to sleep, given up around midnight, and found myself wandering through the farmhouse in the dark. I stopped in the living room, stood beside Eleanor's reading chair, floral print, worn armrests where her hands had rested for 20 years. She used to sit there every evening with her mystery novels and her reading glasses perched on her nose. I moved to the kitchen, ran my hand along the counter where she used to roll out pie dough, apple, cherry, pecan. She'd dust flour across the surface, hum old hymns while she worked, and the whole house would smell like cinnamon and butter. In the bedroom, I stood at the foot of our bed, the same bed where she died 3 years ago, morphine drip clicking, her breathing shallow and irregular. I held her hand for 14 hours straight. When she finally went, the silence was absolute. Her photograph sat on the dresser. Our wedding day, 1977. She was 23, wearing her mother's dress, holding a bouquet of daisies, smiling like the future was something bright and beautiful. I picked up the frame. "I don't know if you'd want me to do this, Ellie," I said to the picture. My voice sounded too loud in the empty room. "Maybe you'd say let it go. Move on. Be the bigger person." The photo didn't answer, obviously. "But he took everything," I continued. "Your rings, our savings, our dignity. And then he stood there and called us embarrassing. Called you embarrassing, Eleanor. You who raised him while I worked the fields. You who sat up with him through every fever and every nightmare. You who died asking me to take care of our boy." I set the frame back on the dresser. I tried taking care of him. I gave him what he asked for, and he threw me away. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. Instagram notification. Dylan had tagged me in something. No, not tagged me. Posted something. The algorithm was showing it to me because I followed his account, even though he'd never followed mine back. Stories from the rehearsal dinner. I opened them. Dylan in a navy suit, arm around Brooke, champagne glass raised. "To new beginnings," the caption read. Next story, Brooke's parents, elegant and silver-haired, toasting. "So blessed to welcome Dylan into our family." Next, a table full of well-dressed people laughing. "Chosen family. Future starts now." Next, Dylan and Brooke kissing under string lights. "Tomorrow we marry our best friend. Grateful for everyone who showed up and showed out for us." Everyone who showed up, not his father, just everyone who mattered. I took screenshots of each one, saved them to a folder on my phone. The last story was a video. Dylan speaking directly to the camera, slightly drunk, emotional. "I just want to say, Brooke's family has given me something I never had growing up. Unconditional support, real love, people who believe in me. Tomorrow's not just about us getting married. It's about me finally understanding what family actually means." I watched it 3 times, then I set my phone down before I threw it across the room. Jerry called at 11:47 p.m. "Are you still awake?" he asked. "Yeah." "Are you sure about tomorrow? Once you walk in there, you can't undo it. Can't take it back." I looked at the uniform hanging on the door, at Eleanor's photograph on the dresser, at the empty jewelry box still sitting on my kitchen counter. "I'm sure," I said. "All right then. I'll pick you up at 6. Get some rest." "Jerry?" "Yeah? Thank you for all of this. That's what family does, Sam. Real family." He hung up. I stood there in the dark house for another hour. I walked back to the bedroom, picked up Eleanor's photograph one more time. He said his father checked out emotionally. I whispered. Said he basically raised himself. That's what he's telling people tomorrow. That I abandoned him. I looked at her smile in the photo, and I swear, somewhere in the silence, I heard her voice. Not really. I'm not crazy. But in my memory, in the way you hear the voice of someone you loved for 40 years, I heard her say it. Make him remember who raised him. I set the photo down gently. I will, Ellie. I promise. I finally went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. I walked through the kitchen of my son's wedding and saw $80,000 worth of flowers, more than my annual pension, bought with my dead wife's jewelry, and arranged for a celebration I was banned from. Saturday morning, 6 a.m., Jerry's diesel truck rumbled into my driveway right on time. I was already dressed in the uniform, bow tie knotted, reading glasses in my pocket, beard trimmed neat. You look the part, Jerry said when I climbed in. We drove in silence through the empty streets of Kansas City, heading north toward Mission Hills, the wealthy suburb where the estate homes sat on multi-acre lots, where the median house price was over $2 million, where people like me only entered through service doors. Thornhill Estate appeared at the end of a long, tree-lined drive. It was breathtaking, and I hated it immediately. The main house was limestone and glass, 3 stories, with manicured gardens spreading in every direction. A fountain courtyard dominated the front entrance. White tents were already being erected on the back lawn. A string quartet was setting up near what would be the ceremony arch. Jerry drove past the main entrance, around to the service lane in the back. You remember the layout? He asked. I remember. Marcus will brief everyone at 9. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't draw attention until you're ready. I know. He parked. Look at me. Last chance to back out. I'm not backing out. Good, Jerry said. Let's go. We entered through the kitchen entrance. The space was massive, commercial-grade stainless steel, 6 ovens, prep stations manned by 24 staff in white chef coats. Marcus met us immediately. 40-something, barrel-chested, kind eyes. He shook my hand. Sam, good to meet you officially. Jerry explained the situation. He lowered his voice. What they did to you? That's not right. Not right at all. You've got full access. I've put you on champagne service during speeches. Main ballroom. Perfect view. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just be smart about whatever you're planning. He gathered all the waitstaff at 9:15. About 30 of us, mostly young people working part-time. He ran through the day's schedule. 200 guests. Ceremony at 2 p.m. Cocktail hour immediately after. Seated dinner at 5. Speeches at 7. Everything needs to be flawless. This is a high-profile event. I caught sight of the menu posted on the kitchen wall. Appetizers, lobster bisque, oysters on the half shell, imported caviar, main course, filet mignon with truffle butter, or pan-seared Chilean sea bass. Dessert, 7-tier wedding cake from Kansas City's most exclusive bakery. Price per plate, $400. My pension is $2,100 a month. I moved through the kitchen, following the other staff into the main ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from 20-foot ceilings. The tables were draped in ivory silk. Each centerpiece was a cascade of white roses, orchids, and peonies. I asked one of the florists how much the arrangements cost. About $4,000 per table, she said absently. 20 tables, so you do the math. $80,000 in flowers, partly funded by my contribution, more than my annual pension, bought with Eleanor's engagement ring. I stood there, holding an empty champagne tray, absorbing the obscene wealth on display. Every detail, every elegant touch, every expensive choice, paid for by a man they deemed too backwards to attend. Then I saw him, Dylan, across the ballroom, greeting arriving guests. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than my truck. His hair was professionally styled. He looked confident, happy, and successful. He looked like he'd never spent a single moment feeling guilty. Brooke glided past me, 10 feet away, discussing seating charts with the wedding planner. She didn't even glance in my direction. I was invisible, just like Jerry promised. Perfect. I watched my son marry a woman who taught him that real family isn't the man who raised him alone after his mother died. It's the people who never ask you for anything, Because they already have everything. 2 p.m. I stood in the service corridor between the kitchen and the main ballroom, watching through the doorway as 200 guests filled white wooden chairs, arranged in the garden. The string quartet played something classical I didn't recognize. Dylan waited at the altar. His best man stood beside him, some college friend I'd never met, never even heard mentioned. The groomsmen were strangers too. Every important position in Dylan's wedding was filled by people who weren't me. The music changed. Bridesmaids walked down the aisle in burgundy gowns. Then the wedding march began. Brooke appeared. Her dress was stunning. I'll give her that. White silk, long train, probably $15,000 of fabric and beadwork. She walked down the aisle alone. No father giving her away. I noticed that detail and filed it away. Maybe her family had rejected this marriage too. Maybe Dylan wasn't the only one with family issues. The guests stood. Brooke reached the altar, took Dylan's hands. The officiant began. Dearly beloved, we gather today to celebrate the union of two people who found something rare and precious. A love that transcends the past and builds toward the future. Transcends the past. I gripped the doorframe. The officiant continued. Dylan and Brooke have chosen to create their own family, built on mutual respect, shared values, and the courage to leave behind old burdens to embrace new beginnings. Old burdens. That's what I was. A burden to be left behind. Dylan's vows came next. He unfolded a piece of paper, his voice carrying across the garden. Brooke, you taught me what it means to be loved without conditions. Growing up, I thought family was about obligation and duty, but you showed me that real family is about choice, about surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, who believe in your dreams, who support who you want to become, not who they want you to be. The guests murmured approvingly. You've given me the family I always deserved, the love I always needed, and I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. My hands were shaking. I set down the champagne tray I'd been holding before I dropped it. Brooke's vows were shorter, corporate and efficient, like her phone call. Dylan, you are my partner in every sense. Together, we're building something extraordinary. I promise to support your ambitions, to stand beside you as you become everything you're meant to be, and to never let anything or anyone hold you back from your potential. Anyone. She meant me. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me by the state of Missouri, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. They kissed. The guests erupted in applause. The string quartet played. Dylan and Brooke walked back down the aisle, beaming, waving, accepting congratulations. I stepped back into the corridor, leaned against the wall, forced myself to breathe. A young waitress, maybe 22, noticed me. You okay? Fine, I managed. Just warm in here. Tell me about it. These monkey suits are brutal. She adjusted her vest. You working the reception? Champagne service during speeches. Good luck. Rich people get handsy with the staff after a few drinks. She walked away. I stood there alone in the corridor, listening to the celebration outside, the laughter, the music, the joy of 200 people toasting my son's new beginning, the beginning that explicitly excluded the man who raised him. I pulled out my phone, checked the recording one more time. Dylan's voice, begging, crying, promising, everything I needed. I put the phone back in my pocket. The cocktail hour would last 90 minutes, dinner another 90, then the speeches at 7, just a few more hours. I could wait. My son stood in front of 200 people and said his father abandoned him, while serving them champagne I paid for with the rings from his mother's dead hand. 7 p.m. Dinner service had been flawless. I'd refilled wine glasses, cleared plates, smiled deferentially at guests who talked over me like I wasn't there. Twice I'd walked within 5 feet of Dylan. He never looked up. Now the guests were finishing dessert, some elaborate chocolate creation with gold leaf and raspberry coulis. The DJ tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin our toasts. If I could have the wedding party's attention, please. I positioned myself in the corner, champagne bottle in hand, eyes down. The perfect invisible servant. The best man went first. Some story about Dylan and him in college, fraternity parties, harmless nostalgia, polite laughter, generic congratulations. One of the bridesmaids followed. She talked about meeting Brooke at law school, how brilliant she was, how she deserved this happiness. More applause. Then Dylan stood. He tapped his champagne glass with a fork, waited for silence. The ballroom quieted. 200 faces turned toward him. "I want to thank everyone who came today," Dylan began. His voice was confident, practiced, seriously. "Looking around this room, seeing all of you here, my real family, the people who've supported me, who've shown up for me, this means everything. My real family. Some of you know I didn't have the easiest childhood." He paused for effect, letting the sympathy build. "My mom died a few years ago. Cancer. It was really hard." Guests murmured sympathetically. Several women reached for tissues. "And my father," another pause, longer this time. "My father checked out emotionally after that. He cared more about his farm than his son. I basically raised myself. Learned pretty quickly that I couldn't count on him for support, encouragement, anything really." My vision blurred at the edges. I gripped the champagne bottle tighter. "So, I left as soon as I could. Got out of that small town, backwards life, built something better, found people who actually cared." Several guests nodded knowingly. Poor Dylan. Such a difficult childhood. Such a brave young man. When I met Brooke's family, Dylan gestured toward the parents' table, where Brooke's mother dabbed at her eyes. I finally understood what it meant to be valued, to be supported, to be loved unconditionally. He raised his glass. "So thank you, Linda and Richard, for showing me what real parents look like, for welcoming me into your family, for being there." The guests raised their glasses. "Hear, hear." Dylan wasn't finished. "This wedding represents more than just Brooke and me getting married. It represents me finally leaving behind all that pain and dysfunction, all those people who held me back. This is my new beginning, our new beginning, with people who actually matter." The applause was thunderous. Brooke stood, took the microphone from Dylan. She wrapped her arm around his waist, smiled at the crowd. "Dylan's so right," she said. Her voice carried that same cold efficiency from our phone call. "We're so grateful we could celebrate today with people who matter, not the deadbeats and backwards people Dylan had to escape to become successful." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Actual laughter. They thought it was funny. "Here's to new beginnings." Brooke raised her glass. "To chosen family. To leaving the past exactly where it belongs." More applause. More laughter. Glasses clinking. I stood in the corner, champagne bottle trembling in my hand, watching 200 people toast to my erasure. The DJ started the music again. Guests returned to conversations. Waiters moved through the room with dessert wine. Nobody noticed the old man in the waiter's uniform standing perfectly still. Nobody saw my hands shaking. Nobody recognized the father who'd been publicly slandered while serving champagne at his own son's wedding. I set down the bottle carefully, removed my reading glasses, and walked out of the shadows, directly toward the head table. I walked out of the shadows and into my son's wedding reception, like a ghost returning from the grave he'd buried me in, and I brought receipts. The ballroom wasn't silent yet, but it was getting there. Conversations faltered as guests noticed the waiter walking across the floor, not shuffling along the edges like service staff should, walking straight down the center aisle, directly toward the head table, with his shoulders back and his eyes up. Dylan saw me first. He was laughing at something Brooke had said, champagne glass halfway to his lips. When his gaze landed on me, I watched the recognition hit him in stages. Confusion first. Who's this waiter approaching us? Then uncertainty. Why does he look familiar? Then the blood drained from his face as understanding arrived. "Dad?" The word came out strangled, barely audible, but it was loud enough. Conversations around us stopped. Heads turned. I reached the head table, stood directly in front of my son, removed the plain glass reading glasses, took off the bow tie. "That's right," I said clearly. "Your dad, the backwards deadbeat who checked out emotionally." Brooke's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide. How did you?" Dylan stammered. I pulled out my phone, looked at the DJ in his booth across the room. He was staring at me, confused. Jerry had already briefed him, slipped him $200, and explained that there might be a special audio moment during the reception. "Can I use your system?" I called across the ballroom. The DJ, bless him, nodded. "Yeah, man. Bluetooth's open." I connected my phone. The pairing confirmation chimed through every speaker in the ballroom. "Dad, don't—" Dylan stood. "Please just—" I pressed play. Dylan's voice filled the room. Not the confident, polished voice from 5 minutes ago. The voice from 3 weeks earlier. Desperate. Crying. Broken. "Dad, it's Dylan. I know I don't deserve this call. I've been terrible. I was angry and stupid and I handled everything wrong. I'm so sorry. About Mom. About disappearing. About all of it." Every guest had stopped talking now. 200 people, frozen, listening to the groom's recorded voice begging his father for help. "I've changed. I met someone. Her name's Brooke Patterson. She's amazing, Dad. We're getting married in June and I want you there. I need you there. I want to make things right." Brooke had gone completely pale. She grabbed Dylan's arm, hissed something I couldn't hear. The recording continued. "There's something I need to ask you, and I hate doing this, but I don't have anyone else to turn to. Our wedding venue fell through. We need $50,000 to secure the new location. I'll pay you back. I swear I will. This wedding, it's not just about me and Brooke. It's about showing you that I've built something good, that I became someone you can be proud of. This is our chance to be a family again, Dad." Dylan's voice cracked on the recording. "Please, I need you. You're the best father I could have asked for. I love you so much." I let it play for another 15 seconds. Then I stopped it. The silence was absolute. I looked at my son, at his horrified expression, at Brooke's fury and fear, at 200 guests staring in shock. "That was 3 weeks ago," I said. My voice is steady, calm, and clear. "Right before I sold my dead wife's wedding rings to give you $50,000. Gasps throughout the room. Several people covered their mouths. Eleanor's engagement ring, her wedding band, the sapphire necklace I gave her on our 25th anniversary. I sold them all to fund this celebration. I gestured around the ballroom, at the flowers, the champagne, the crystal chandeliers, the celebration. I continued, that I was banned from attending because I'm too embarrassed. Dylan's mouth opened. No words came out. I waited. The wedding reception collapsed faster than Dylan's lies. 200 people watching a groom realize that when you burn your father, sometimes the flames spread. The ballroom erupted, not with applause, with chaos. "You said your father abandoned you," someone shouted from the back. "He paid for this entire wedding?" A woman at table 7 stood, pointing at Dylan. "You stood up there and lied to all of us?" Dylan's hands were shaking. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. It's complicated. You don't understand the full situation." "What's complicated?" I asked calmly. "I'm your father. You asked me for money. I gave it to you. Then your fiancé told me I was too embarrassed to attend." Brooke grabbed Dylan's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his tuxedo sleeve. "Dylan, fix this," she hissed, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Fix this right now." But there was nothing to fix. I continued, my voice carrying across the silent room. I liquidated my life savings, sold my wife's 25th anniversary sapphire necklace, the one I gave Eleanor before she died of cancer. The cancer my son couldn't be bothered to come home for. More gasps. A woman started crying. "Your fiancé called me a backwards hick," I said, looking directly at Brooke. "Said I'd embarrass you in front of your important clients. Said you couldn't have guests wondering who the old farmer in the cheap suit was." Brooke's face was white. "That's not, you're twisting my words." I recorded the call. I said simply, "Missouri's a one-party consent state. Would you like me to play that too?" Her mouth snapped shut. One of the groomsmen stood up. "Dylan, what the hell, man? You made us all complicit in this. I gave a toast congratulating you on overcoming your difficult childhood." "I didn't know," another guest shouted. "I felt sorry for you." Brooke's mother, Elegant, silver-haired Linda from the parents' table stood abruptly. She looked at her daughter with something like disgust, grabbed her purse, and walked straight out of the ballroom. Her husband followed without a word. One by one, the bridesmaids abandoned the head table, just stood up and left, whispering to each other, shooting Brooke looks of betrayal. I noticed the videographer in the corner, camera still running, capturing every second of this disaster. This would all be documented, preserved. The wedding video Dylan and Brooke would never be able to watch. "Dad, please." Dylan's voice cracked. He stepped toward me, hands out like he was approaching a wild animal. "Please, just stop. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we talk about this privately? Please?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he got caught. Sorry that his carefully constructed image had shattered in front of 200 witnesses. Sorry that his lies had been exposed with his own recorded voice. But he wasn't sorry for calling me embarrassing, for taking Eleanor's rings and erasing me from his life. "You're sorry you got caught," I said quietly. "I'm sorry I wasted Eleanor's memory on you." Dylan flinched like I'd slapped him. I turned around and walked toward the service exit. Didn't run, didn't rush. Just walked with my shoulders back and my head up, past the abandoned champagne glasses and the wilting flower arrangements and the 7-tier cake that would never be cut. Behind me, the ballroom dissolved into shouting. I didn't look back. Jerry was waiting at the service door with my regular clothes in a duffel bag. "Time to go?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Time to go." I didn't just expose my son in public. I made sure the law recognized what he'd done, because shame fades, but court records are forever. Jerry drove me straight to James Morton's office. James had been Eleanor's estate attorney, a man in his mid-60s who'd handled our wills, our property deeds, everything legal for the past 20 years. I'd called him from the truck, explained the situation, and asked if he could meet me on a Saturday night. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, he'd said without hesitation. His office was in a modest building downtown, lights on in the second-floor window when we arrived. James met us at the door, still wearing his golf shirt from whatever he'd been doing when I called. "Sam," he shook my hand, studied my face. "You look like you've been through hell." Something like that. We sat in his conference room. I laid out everything on the table like evidence at a trial. The wire transfer receipt showing $50,000 sent to Dylan Whitaker's account. Dylan's voicemail, now backed up in 3 separate locations, where he begged for money and promised reconciliation. Text messages where he swore to pay me back, every penny. The recording of Brooke's call uninviting me from the wedding. Missouri's one-party consent laws meant I'd legally recorded every word of her telling me I was too embarrassing to attend. Bank statements showing my depleted savings account. The jeweler's receipt for Eleanor's rings, $31,000. James reviewed everything methodically, making notes on a legal pad. When he finished, he looked up. "This is fraud by misrepresentation," he said. "Your son solicited funds under false pretenses. Specifically, he claimed the money was for family reconciliation and promised repayment, with no genuine intention of honoring either representation. The recording of his fiancée's call establishes that the wedding invitation was never sincere. Can we recover the money? Absolutely. We'll file a civil complaint Monday morning." He started writing. "We're seeking the full $50,000 plus interest, emotional damages, and legal fees. I'm also going to request that the court find his conduct was willful and malicious, which could increase the damage award." "I don't want to destroy him," I said. "I just want what's mine back." "Sam, he destroyed himself. We're just documenting it." James looked at me over his reading glasses. "Cases like this rarely go to trial. Once his attorney sees this evidence, they'll push for settlement. Your son won't want this in public court records with testimony and depositions. The humiliation would be permanent." "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. It took 6 days. On Friday afternoon, James called. Dylan's attorney made an offer. Full repayment of $50,000, plus $15,000 in damages, and emotional distress compensation, plus all legal fees. Total recovery, $65,000. I sat in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at Eleanor's empty jewelry box. He's paying me extra? The $15,000 is punitive. It's his attorney's way of acknowledging your son's conduct was indefensible. They want this settled before it goes any further. Do you accept? I thought about it, about taking Dylan to court, putting him on the stand, making him admit everything in legal testimony, but that would just hurt us both more. I accept, I said. Smart choice. I'll have the settlement agreement drawn up. You'll have a check within 10 business days. I hung up and sat in the silence of my farmhouse. $65,000, more than I'd given, more than Eleanor's rings had been worth. Justice, documented and official, but it didn't feel like victory. It just felt like the end of something that should never have begun. I took the money my son returned and gave it to children who were actually abandoned, because the best revenge isn't matching cruelty with cruelty. It's proving you were always the person they claimed you weren't. The settlement check arrived on a Tuesday. $65,000, made out to Samuel Whitaker, signed by Dylan's attorney. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at it. This money represented everything. Eleanor's rings, my savings, my humiliation, Dylan's lies, the worst experience of my life, reduced to a dollar amount and a piece of paper. I didn't want it. Oh, I needed it. My savings were still depleted. Property taxes were coming due. The farmhouse needed repairs. I could have used every penny. But keeping this money felt like keeping the poison inside me, like letting Dylan's betrayal continue to live in my bank account, earning interest, reminding me every time I checked my balance. I thought about what Eleanor would do. She'd been a giver. When neighbors struggled, she brought casseroles. When the church needed volunteers, she signed up. When foster kids in Kansas City needed winter coats, she organized donation drives. She would have found a way to turn this pain into something good. 3 days later, I drove to the Kansas City Children's Foundation downtown. The foundation supported kids in the foster care system, children who'd been genuinely abandoned by their parents, shuffled between homes, aging out of the system with no family and no support. Kids who actually experienced what Dylan had falsely claimed. The director, a woman named Rosa Chen, met me in her office, maybe 50 years old, kind eyes, photos of foster children covering every wall. Mr. Whitaker, she said, shaking my hand. Your call intrigued me. You mentioned wanting to make a significant donation? I handed her the check. She looked at it. Her eyes went wide. $65,000. I want to establish a memorial fund, I said. The Eleanor Whitaker Memorial Fund, for educational scholarships, foster kids who want to go to college, trade school, whatever they need to build a better life. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Whitaker, this will change lives. Multiple lives. Do you know how many kids we could help with this? I have some ideas. May I ask why? Why our foundation? I looked at the photos on her wall. Teenagers in graduation gowns. Little kids holding report cards. Children who'd been dealt terrible hands and were fighting to build something anyway. Because some kids actually are abandoned, I said quietly. Mine wasn't. He just decided I was. He should remember the difference. Rosa stood, came around the desk, and hugged me. A complete stranger hugging a 69-year-old farmer who'd just handed her a check representing the worst betrayal of his life. Your wife would be proud, she whispered. I hope so. The donation made the local news 3 days later. Small story. Bottom of the metro section. Local farmer establishes foster care scholarship fund in late wife's memory. Dylan saw it. I know because he called. 17 times over the next week. I never answered. He left voicemails. Dad, please, I saw the news. We need to talk. I want to make this right. Please answer. I'm so sorry, please. I deleted them all without listening past the first few words, because I'd learned something important. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I could let go of my anger without letting him back into my life. Eleanor's memory was being honored. The money was helping children who actually needed it, and I was finally at peace. The morning after I exposed my son, I woke up expecting to feel victorious. Instead, I just felt tired, like I'd been carrying something heavy for years, and finally set it down. Let me finish this story properly. The wedding was on a Saturday. Sunday morning, I woke up in my farmhouse to 43 missed calls and 62 text messages, all from Dylan. The messages started apologetic. "Dad, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain." Then desperate, "Please answer your phone. I need to talk to you. This is killing me." Then angry, "You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. How could you do this to me?" And finally, self-pitying, "Brooke left. She went back to Chicago. The marriage might not survive this. Are you happy now?" I read them all once. Then I made coffee and sat on the porch watching the sunrise over the fields. Was I happy? No. I was tired, sad, relieved, angry, peaceful. All of it at once, mixed together in a way I couldn't quite name. By Monday, Dylan had called 17 more times. I didn't answer any of them. That's when his attorney reached out to James Morton with the settlement offer. $65,000 to make the lawsuit disappear, to keep the case out of public court records, to protect whatever was left of Dylan's reputation. I accepted, not because I wanted his money. I wanted nothing from him anymore, but because legal resolution meant closure, official acknowledgement that what he'd done was wrong, documentation that I wasn't crazy, wasn't overreacting, wasn't the villain he'd tried to paint me as. The check arrived 10 days later. I've already told you what I did with it. The Eleanor Whitaker Memorial Fund at the Kansas City Children's Foundation. Every penny donated to help kids who were actually abandoned, actually left behind, actually raised themselves. Kids who experienced the childhood Dylan lied about having. Rosa Chen calls me once a month with updates. So far, the fund has helped 4 teenagers attend community college, 2 kids go to trade schools, and 1 young woman get her nursing certification. Real lives genuinely changed, because I turned my son's betrayal into something that mattered. Eleanor would have loved that. I kept one thing from the jewelry sale, though, her simple gold wedding band. I'd asked the jeweler to return it as part of the settlement negotiation. Dylan's attorney agreed immediately, probably grateful for anything that made me seem reasonable. I wear it on a chain around my neck now, not on my finger. That's not my place anymore, but close to my heart, where it belongs. Dylan still calls occasionally, once a month maybe. I see his name on my phone screen and let it go to voicemail. I don't listen to the messages anymore. There's nothing he can say that would change what happened. Brooke did leave him, by the way. I heard through Jerry, who heard through Marcus the caterer, who heard through the Kansas City Society gossip network. She filed for annulment 3 weeks after the wedding, claiming fraud and misrepresentation, the same legal theory James Morton used against Dylan. The irony wasn't lost on me. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it there? Have you experienced something like this? Family betrayal? Being used? Having your love weaponized against you? You're not alone. There are thousands of us. And if this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. I want to leave you with a few things I learned. First, family isn't blood. Family is honor. It's showing up. It's keeping promises. It's treating the people who love you with dignity and respect. Dylan shares my DNA, but he stopped being family when he decided I was too embarrassing to deserve basic human decency. Second, you teach people how to treat you. For 10 years, I accepted Dylan's silence. I made excuses for him, blamed myself, carried the guilt of our estrangement like it was entirely my fault. When he finally called asking for money, I should have said no, not out of spite, out of self-respect, because giving someone $50,000 to buy back their love teaches them that your love is for sale. Third, dignity is never taken from you. It's only surrendered. Brooke called me backwards, embarrassing, a hick. Dylan erased me from his life and his narrative, but they couldn't make me those things. They couldn't take my worth, my history, my 43 years of honest work and faithful marriage and dedicated fatherhood. I'm the same man I've always been. They just couldn't see it. And finally, revenge is empty, but justice matters. Walking into that wedding and exposing Dylan's lies felt necessary and right. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because the truth deserved to be spoken. Public lies require public correction, but the real healing came from the charity donation, from turning Eleanor's memory into something that helps vulnerable kids, from choosing purpose over bitterness. I'm 69 years old now. I live alone on this farm, same as I have for 3 years since Eleanor died. I lease the fields to a younger farmer. I fix things that don't need fixing. I drink coffee on the porch and watch the seasons change. Some people might call that a sad life, lonely, isolated, but I call it peaceful. I stand in my kitchen sometimes, looking at Eleanor's photograph on the dresser, and I talk to her like she's still here. I did right by you, Ellie, I tell her. I protected your memory. I made sure those rings became something good. I didn't let him dishonor what we built. And in the silence of the farmhouse, in the creaking of old wood and the whistle of wind through the eaves, I swear I hear her answer, I know, Sam, I'm proud of you. That's enough for me. That's everything, actually. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you're worth more than how people treat you. Your dignity belongs to you. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't deserve your love, even if they're family, especially if they're family. Take care of yourselves out there.